Hello, class. Welcome to Jesus Mission and Ministry, Week 4, Calming the Sea. I'm here at a little church in farm country in Michigan. I'm out preaching this weekend, so do the video here. A lovely altar behind me. It's so a typical kind of a Filipino vibe. We have a Filipino pastor here, so the angels looking at the tabernacle there. So I want to start by reminding us of something. Genesis from the first week. Remember to read in the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. I bring that up because the beginning of the Gospel of John mirrors that language. It evokes it. So here's from the beginning of the Gospel of John, called the prologue. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. This beginning of John's Gospel is the clearest biblical indication of the full divinity of Jesus. Jesus is the Word of God spoken in creation. Remember, God said, and it was made. And God said, and it was made. That Word is Jesus. But it leaves some ambiguity here in John's prologue, because it says, the Word is God, and the Word was with God. Well, which one is it? Exactly. We can't tease that out here. But it's a question we're still wrestling with 2,000 years later. But it gives us Jesus' basic mission. I have come to bring light to all people. So Jesus is God incarnate. Incarnate. In flesh dwelt among us. Literally it says, and God pitched his tent among us. So that's what we're going to look at here today. What does it mean for God to pitch his tent with us, to live with us, to become one of us? In some sense, it means that God, the Word of God, has become limited, fragile. The Word was spoken, it was created. Jesus, however, has to struggle. So, God enters this mess of creation in order to transform it. 'Twas our job, remember? Then we're doing it, sort of, and not completely. So God enters to help us to move the ball forward. So now the Gospel of Luke that you read today. This chapter 8 is amazing, right? It starts with Jesus teaching about the reign of God in parables. Why does he do that? Well, he said, because there are no words to describe it. It's beyond that. But even for Jesus, since he is incarnated, it's not even clear to him as it was in heaven. That is, he doesn't have an infinite brain to make use of his infinite mind. He's got a human brain. And so he's trying to say what he's feeling and thinking, but he's got to use metaphor and parables. But then we get to the part that you spend most of your reading on, which was the calming of the storm. Right before that, though, there's a little short section I want to deal with. It says here, then Jesus' mother and his brothers came to him, but they could not reach him because of the crowd. And he was told, your mother and your brothers are standing outside wanting to see you. But he said to them, my mother and my brothers are those who hear the word of God and do it. Now think about that realistically. What if you were busy in your office talking to people and someone came in, knock, knock, knock. Excuse me, your mother and your brothers are here to see you. And you said, oh, who are they? Everyone's my mother and my brothers. Do you think that would go over well? I don't think so. But Jesus is also saying, my mother and my brothers are those who hear the word of God and do it. So, yes, they are my mother and brothers, but so could you be if you hear the word of God and do it. Being God's brother. It's one effect of the incarnation of God pitching his tent among us, becoming flesh, incarnate. He's here with us and we have access like we could never have had otherwise. To be God's brother, if you just hear the word of God and do it. So then, the calming of the storm, and then this double healing. That's the one I have in you right about. And I want to talk about that because in the healing profession, you can probably relate a bit of it. It's this crazy thing. Jesus is in the midst of this crowd and they're pushing and shoving, and this big high honcho comes from the temple. He says, oh, my daughter's sick, please. Now this is a big thing for a temple official to come to Jesus and say, I don't care what they say, it's my daughter, please come. You're not the enemy to me if you save my daughter. So Jesus sets off to help, but the crowd is still hemming him in. And then some woman touches the hem of his garment and a power goes out and heals her. Jesus feels that power. And he stops and he says, who touched me? To which his disciples can only laugh. What do you mean, who touched you? There's people everywhere here, hemming in on every side. But he's been touched, right, in a different way. She, knowing that she's been healed, thinks, what have I done? And goes to hide, to slink away, to be nowhere. And Jesus, no, who touched me? And so she comes forward. Now, what could Jesus have said at that point? This is a woman who has been bleeding for how many years? She is unclean. And by touching Jesus, she's made him unclean. Made the whole crowd unclean. It would be like you're ready for surgery and someone comes up and sneezes all over you. Thank you. No, you wouldn't say that, would you? And Jesus could just ignore the fact. He knows he's healed her, let her go. But think about that one as well. She thinks she has stolen something by touching the hem of his garment. If you stole a cure from God, you'd be waiting for the other shoe to fall. You know what I mean? I'd be expecting retribution at any moment. But Jesus reaches out to her and tells her the most amazing thing. Not he has saved her, your faith has saved you. It's you and the value that I find in you, the value of your faith. You have a dignity of faith that healed yourself. She doesn't have to hide from that. She doesn't have to be ashamed anymore. She doesn't have to explain to the people around her, oh, I'm sorry, but I don't have that anymore. And I stole it from him and he doesn't know. No, he has restored her to an integral part of this community by speaking the dignity of your faith has healed you. So now not only her body is healed, her spirit is healed. Her relationship to the community is healed. Because he took that moment on the way to someplace else to single her out, see her, affirm her. Now that's something. So that's what I want you to think about in your writing. There's other pieces of that as well. Jesus throwing people out, they're laughing at him, you know. But that we can talk about in the mix of the discussion. All right, thank you.